All right. Good morning, Julia. You guys friends want to say good morning, Julia? I don't think she's actually watching right now. I don't think I figured out how to do it live yet. All right. Finishing up this second week of school. Looking forward to our first full week. Oh no, I put that up there, and somebody's going to be so excited to do their crazy stuff from yesterday. All right. Biology, that's where we left off. And then the next is psychology. We're going to look at psychology. That's a major subject that affects a lot of people. I mean, even if you don't have a psychologist, psychology is a big part of your, mental health is part of your life. You got physical health, mental health, spiritual health. So we approach psychology with the knowledge that we're created with a body and a soul. Remember, psychology is actually the study of the soul. You think of it as a study of the mind, but it's a study of the soul. If you translate it literally. And we know that we're created and born into sin and in need of redemption. We are not guilt-free agents in control of our actions. We are not our own, we are not sovereign. God is sovereign. Sociology. By the way, these are all part of what we call social sciences or social studies. So some of them are more hard sciences like biology and chemistry, but these kind of things fall under social sciences or social studies. So a social studies teacher can teach history, or they can take enough classes to teach psychology or sociology, anthropology. That's something you might be thinking about in your future. Anybody in here going the route of biology, nurse, doctor, vet? One? How about psychology? Anybody interested in that? One? Sociology? I mean, beyond just teaching, if you're, you could be working in, sometimes it could be in conjunction with psychology. You're working social services. You're helping people, in society, families especially. And when you're looking at it from a Christian perspective, you as a sociologist, that's someone that's trying to help people, you're going to go into it with the idea that's the truth, that history has shown us that societies flourish best when the family unit is intact. And whether you're Christian or not, facing the truth that societies are better off when the family's intact and there is church affiliation. That's just true. We can see the correlation between the decline in American society when it comes to crime, poverty, cycles of poverty and crime in families that aren't intact or dysfunctional. And when the state goes outside of its sphere, when you think of last year, the levels of government you learned, they go like this: God, self, family, church, state. And they're not just levels, but you can see them as spheres of governance. And when the state stays within their sphere, because God did ordain the state institution, but when they try to get involved in family governance, that's when we start to have problems. And part of the problem is the state feels the need to get involved in family governance because why? Because families aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Fathers aren't being who they're supposed to be. And we wonder. I told you, if you heard this once, you heard it probably 20 times. You probably know what I'm going to say. That in the black community, 80% of kids are going and living with no father in their home. And history tells us it's not an opinion. It's not like, what are you, some kind of patriarch? Is that sexist? No. It's just sociological facts. But that's not good. Law. Anybody interested in law? We got future lawyers maybe? Anybody? One?
Well, what mortgage? Hey, JPMorgan.law. Who's that?
Societies are at their best when they promote justice and order. And that should be based on understanding of God's nature and character. According to God's nature and character. Being people of integrity and justice. So even as we just take this cursory look at all these things, and you're semi-aware, I think, of what's going on in the world around us, in particular in America, with your little, you've got a limited knowledge of history, and you have a limited interest, at least I think some of you, and you look at everything that's going on, and you can see all this playing out, right? We're living in it. Societies that are not living according to God's institutions, with the family being the strongest. Societies that where justice is perverted. Politics, if you look at the last two right now, we can talk about them in conjunction, law and politics. Are we really promoting justice, or what's playing out on the national scene right now is we have one political side of the aisle persecuting and prosecuting the other. How is the society going to stay unified, intact, successful? And on top of that, what is it that unifies Americans anymore? If we've thrown God out the last two generations, that used to unify even the non-Christians who believe that, hey, the Christian way is a pretty good way to live. If we've thrown God out, we're not unified under the cross. And then we've got many people who are being taught the last couple generations to believe that America is not great, that it never was. We're not unified under the flag. If there's nothing to unify us, how we continue to be successful? United we stand, divided we fall, right? Where our job is to win the battle. Our job is to win the battle of ideas, to win the battle for truth, to win the battle for your minds and your future family's minds, because we can turn it around. And it has turned around. There's been several generations that have looked around at the world and said, whoa. There's been awakening. There's been resurgence. There's been pockets of it even recently. On Monday, we're going to talk a little more in depth about, I'm going to try not to take the whole class, but we will address 9/11. And in a small little portion of time, it was refreshing after that incredible nightmare that people were unified again. We had everybody. Imagine this, all the congressmen were standing on the steps of the Capitol, locked arms, unified, singing. They were singing hymns. Unfortunately, it took something like that to wake everybody up and realize that, what are we doing here? We're all Americans. We're all in this together, right? Economics. We look at it from the perspective, like we learned last year, that obviously God, in his idea of economics and economy and how we use our resources, God knows that private property is important. It's in the 10 Commandments. Do not steal. Why would that be in the top 12 commandments? So, Marxist, you're going to learn that a Marxist says there should be no private property.
Calling you a loser, but then what is it? Why don't you tell the class what it is, Drew?
There should be no private property according to the Marxist. The Marxist says that it's unjust and immoral to claim that you own part of land or the resources.
How do you know that 80% of the black community is Native?
Because that's people study these things. These are
That's just
reports
like
that
crazy.
are put out. I know it's crazy.
Like we
I
talking
mean, it's
like,
crazy that I know, or it's
like
crazy
a
that
black
it's a thing.
American neighborhood, like Harlem, Detroit, or like everywhere in the world?
In the country, in the United States.
So if you're black, you have a 20% chance of having that.
Yeah.
I have a hard
in the
time
home.
believing that.
In the home. I'm sorry.
I'm sure it's over
I wish
50%, but I
I
have a
wish
hard
it
time
wasn't
believing
true.
80%.
Not that long ago, just about 10, 20 years ago, it was only like 60-some percent. It keeps growing. Don't you see how, don't you understand how it's possible it keeps growing? Do you see us right now, this moment, do you see us trending towards godly lifestyle principles or away from them? Right, so it's no wonder these things keep trending in the wrong direction. Just as the trend goes from, when I was your age, 90% of people, more than that, even if they weren't devout Christians, would still identify as Christians. Now we're down into the 60s, right? And it might be even, that was a couple years ago I saw that, hopefully it's not lower. So as that trend goes this way, the other trends, the other ills in our society are gonna go the other way. It kind of makes sense that they would work like that. Right? Because we're not following God's way. We're not unified in any way, not even in our families. There you go. So we're not unified under the cross. We're not unified under Christian principles. We're not unified under the American principles of our republic, the flag. And then we are not even unified in our families, and we wonder why there's so much fighting on the news all the time between political parties. And we're wondering why America, you want me to keep going? It's not just that. The other trend is, we went from, when your grandparents were your age, your great-grandparents, we're number one because we're number one in math, we're number one in science. You look at where we rank statistically according to the developed countries in education, it's definitely down into the 30s. I think we might be in the 40s now. Can you imagine that there's 40 other countries that are, according to standardized testing, better than the United States students? Lord, you're pricing me out. I live amongst these people. That there's 40 other countries that are better than us in education overall, in particular math and science. We're the leaders of the free world. This isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up, invigorate you, energize you into saying, hey, we can change it. Because it has changed in our history. There have been great awakenings. History. There's a beginning and an end. We look at history, we know, when we study history, we know the Creator. We know there is a beginning. In the beginning, right? God created. We also know, though we don't know in great detail, we can take Bible passages and try to parse through them and figure out the best we can what the end's going to be like, but no one knows for sure, but we do know that there's going to be an end, right? And we do know that Christ is going to come again and usher in this utopia that Marxists are trying to create here on earth, right? From each according to his means, to each according to their needs, and we'll all be taken care of. Nobody will have any needs. This utopia here on earth that we'll never have, because we know from our knowledge of humanity that we are fallen. We will have that. We will experience it. And we'll experience it to a greater degree than these Marxists could ever dream. And I'm talking about the Marxists that are really idealist Marxists and they really believe in what they're saying. I'm not talking about many of the politicians that are only in it for the power and control. I'm talking about there are people that are legit Marxists that really believe that if we would just all take to the teachings, then we can create this utopia on earth. There are people like that. And if you go on to college, you'll probably experience and you'll run into someone that they just genuinely believe that. Again, I'm not talking about the politicians that are in it for money, power, and control. There are people with these genuine idealistic visions of how the world could be and should be. And you do have something in common with them, a common place to start when you're talking to them and you're trying to fulfill your commission to be the ambassadors and witnesses that you share. You're like, hey, you're right. I share with you that desire that we need to, and part of the reason that they have so much power and control is because how we fail as Christians to do what we're supposed to do in our families and in, what are we called to do? What are we called to do when in our community there's orphans or widows? Are we not called to be the ones that take care of them? And that's how it used to be. It used to be when your great-great-grandparents were your age, especially, and even your great-grandparents, when there was a need in the community, who took care of it? Number one, who was there first? The church. The church made up those families who knew that it was their job to take care. Now what do we have? Now we have, oh yeah, we'll have churches that'll have, they'll have their place open for food, and you can go there once a month or something, right? But by and large, who's taking care of it? The government. The church has abdicated our, where's it at? The individual responsibility. Are you reading? Our individual responsibility, we've abdicated that to the state government. Going back to the family. Fathers, 2 generations ago, when I was a kid, fathers, the statistics tell us how divorce rates shot up in the 60s and 70s. As the Great Society, the war on poverty was going on, and families that used to stay together, if not just for the sake of the kids, because listen, if you're thinking that right now, and maybe you understand this because you've lived with your mom and dad, you know it isn't all sunshine and roses all the time, even in very loving Christian homes, that there's going to be conflict, right? But so for most of history, people were willing to go through that conflict. And thankfully for most of you, unfortunately not for me, but for most of you, your parents have gotten through that, right? Because they have that steadfast desire to keep their family together. But too often, fathers found out in the 60s and 70s when we created this welfare state, this war on poverty, and the government started taking care of everything, that hey, I don't have to stay in this relationship. I can just leave. And I know my children will be taken care of. Where before it was like, I can't do that. I might be stuck in this relationship, and I made a vow till death do us part. And now I have children, and I've got to provide for them, so I can't leave. Well, once the government takes over, so many of them decided that they could leave. And they did. And now we have a divorce rate over 50%. And guess what? If you look at the divorce rate for non-Christian people and the divorce rate for Christian people, guess what you see?
Same.
They're saying, is that not sad? It is disgusting. It's not a joke. It really is. Last thing. Looks like we got a first test coming up next week. 4 tests to determine truth. Because we are truth seekers, right, Isaac? So the book on page 20, which we'll get into right when we're done with this, will be right there on page 20 to talk about. I know we might have covered it last year, but it's worth looking at again to remind us, because I've seen it how many times. I still learn from it. The first test is the test of reason. Listen, we talked about this last year. Oftentimes Christians are looked at by the world, and these university professors especially, as the soft-headed ones, the ones that some of them can't wait to get their hands on. Watch where you say things in today's world. Euphemisms you use. They can't wait to get into their classroom to be able to indoctrinate and undo everything you've been taught, because they see you as only thinking the way you do and believing the way you do because of this faith thing. And they don't see you as someone being backed with reason. And there's reasons you believe. That's why we do this. There's reasons, Landon, that we believe what we believe. And last year we went through learning all those things, and I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, because we see that there's people that go with the Hubble telescope, and the more they see about space, it closer brings them to God. Again, I'll say, a little bit of philosophy brings a man to atheism, but a deeper look at philosophy brings him back to God. So we need to be able to defend with reason. We're not empty-headed. We're not just following God because of faith. We've got actual reasons for our, even though that's good enough for us. Remember, our job is to teach others. Test of the outer world. So if there's a test of an outer world, there's probably going to be a test of an inner world, right? The test of the outer world says that there is external evidence, which we're good with. Let's bring it on. Let's have the evidence. You don't have to go by what I say and believe it just because I say, well, God says. No, we have external evidence for our beliefs. The test of the inner world. And this is important. It is important to relate things, all this truth, relate all of this truth. It becomes more real to us if it does match our personal experience. That is important. That you can get people to see that the evidence that's out there in the world that points to the truth that you have, and you can reason with them, and you can also help them see that it does pertain to their own personal experience. And think about it. If you haven't experienced yet, if you haven't been tested yet yourself with all the things you've been taught, when you do come across those tests, it will strengthen your faith. It will strengthen your knowledge and your wisdom and your faith that what you've learned is true. Because you've gone through an experience that proves that to you. So that is an important part of seeking truth, that we actually experience it. In everything that we learn, we find out it is true. I find out that it's true. I certainly have. And then the test of the real world. How does this play out? What are the consequences? By going through the statistics, that's part of laying out what are the consequences in the real world. Hey, in the real world, when we don't follow God's design, when we don't follow the biblical worldview, and we see what happens in our families and society, guess what the consequences are? Here they are, buddy. Man, but they'll come up with some other reason or argument that they'll come up with other reasons for it, like usually it's, well, because the government doesn't have enough money. That's usually what it comes down to. So what we need to do is raise the taxes on the rich. We need to take it from that 1% so the government can fix everything. That's basically what our society has become. Questions, comments? So in the book, we go there now, we will take another look at, because last year, I think I brought it into the classroom last year because I didn't get to teach you TT and I didn't know if it was going to be taught or when I was going to teach it in, and I wanted to make sure that we all at least have been exposed to this, because you might come across this at the college and university level again, because it is a parable that gets used a lot because it does make sense. The parable of the, what's that? Elephant. And the author in this book talks about it on page 20. Yeah. Yeah. If you go to page 20, you'll see actually that even though it wasn't really intended this way, to talk about the parable of the elephant now, right after that, but you'll see that that's based on page 20 in the text here. Section 13 of chapter 1. It says, whether we accept Christianity, Islam, secularism, Marxism, New Spirituality, or postmodernism, we accept a worldview that describes the others as hopelessly distorted. right? So we as Christians, we look at these other worldviews and we're like, if we can only get them to see the light, to see the truth, the light of truth, that who God is, right? Well, they look at us and they're like I said, those university professors, those secularists and Marxists, they're like, I can't wait. If I can only, I can't wait to let those kids know that everything they've been taught is all based on faith, and it's not reasonable. So they see your view as distorted. They cannot all depict the things that as they really are, though, right? If you've got two views of the world that are 180 degrees apart, they can't both be true. But there is truth. And the good news is, just like last year, what was the other analogy the author gave last year? Not the elephant, but anybody remember? The idea that you can only see part of it, but actually we know the whole truth. Come on, somebody's going to remember it. The what? The box top. Remember he talked about we can see the whole picture, right? And those of you, well, it makes me sad. Mr. Chaffin's over there with the puzzle. So you got the pieces of the puzzle, and you haven't put the puzzle together yet. And if you didn't have the box top, how difficult that would be, right? We have the box top. And we know it's an elephant. These 6 blind men, or these 6 people that can only see the world, quote unquote, or perceive the world according to the senses they have by touch, they don't know the whole truth. They only see what they're perceiving based on their limited knowledge. They can only feel it because they can't see it. So Sam, this might be new to you. Bottom of page 20. It says, some people in history have tried to get around the differences between worldviews by telling a parable. And it goes like this. Please, somebody else read it. Go ahead, Verity.
6 blind men come into contact with an elephant. One handles the tail and exclaims that the elephant is like a rope.
Okay, so if this is new to you, who's in here new besides Sam? It wasn't in Bible last year. Okay, so he can't see, he's just touching something. It's like the tail feels kind of like a rope. Can you imagine that? So what does he think it is if that's all he touches? Obviously, it's a rope. Go ahead.
Another grasps a leg and describes the elephant as a tree trunk. A third feels the tusk and says the animal is similar to a spirit, and so on. Since each feels only a small portion of the whole elephant, all 6 men give correspondingly different descriptions of their experience.
Okay, so far this is a popular parable because it makes sense that, does it not make sense, Sam, that a person like right now growing up, let's say in Zimbabwe, and they've never heard the truth of the gospel, maybe they haven't even been raised in a Muslim home, they really don't know anything about the world and truth, right? And so all they know is what they know. You understand what I'm saying? So they're going to perceive things according to that limited knowledge. No one is really, in this parable, no one is really right or wrong, Cameron. You can't say that blind man in his, there's no pun intended. I was about to say his eyes is wrong because I didn't even mean to go there. Yeah. So you can't say that the man that touches the tail, you can't convince him he's wrong because that's all he knows. That's the only perception that he has, right? You can't say that any of them are right or wrong. We're all correct in our own way with our limited knowledge. Or it seems, stay with me here, let's look on page 20. It seems at first glance, now we're on page 21, Joey.
I'm locked in.
But how do we know the blind men are all touching the same elephant? First, Cam, Will. 21. Page 21. Number 1, we know, or the parable assumes, that each man can discern only part of the truth about the nature of the elephant. Number 2, we know something the blind men don't. That it is a real elephant. Yeah.
I heard John MacArthur say that the elephant speaks with the Bible.
So he used this parable?
But he's like, everyone's like, what is this thing? But
Yeah.
it's talking.
Because God sent his word, yeah. Very good. Very good. You're locked in.
Big game tonight.
The first assumption assumes no one possesses complete knowledge. The second one says no one possesses complete knowledge because we know what the elephant, or reality, is really like. But there's a contradiction here. On the other hand, the story claims that we, the blind men, have limited knowledge. But if everyone is blind, no one can know the ultimate shape of the elephant. We need someone who is not blind, someone who knows all truth and communicates it to us accurately. Listen, are you prepared to go out into the world and be steadfast and bold and strong enough, no matter what you come in contact with, who you come in contact with, what other philosophies, to know that you stand on truth, in truth, and in all of these areas that we're going to talk about, there is a truth, and you are confident in it because that truth is revealed to you by God himself. Because the elephant speaks. Very good. So you have it. And you're not allowed to have that knowledge and hide it under a bowl. You're to let that little light of yours shine. Right? Even on the football field. Even in the Cheney locker room.
So we're not calling them the Cukes, right? We're calling them the Marlington Dukes.
Yeah, Chris got some of that.
Wait.
He's calling them the Marlington Cukes.
Okay.
That's like that's like what a kid in 3rd grade would do.
You're just being harsh to one another.
Do we have to read Romans 1?
Yeah, if you didn't read, listen. Let's see. If you didn't read Romans 1, how about this? You're going to let me know you didn't read it. So then we'll talk about it then. I mean, this school year. Not based on what we did last year.
So Frank, are you throwing the Helena County, Trumbull County pastors like Matt Nager in the starting 5?
What do you mean? Like,
I think
we're
I'm
ranking
throwing-
pastors?
He's big on the starting 5.
I think I'm throwing Matt Nager in the starting 5. Just like a basketball team. I think I'm gonna put him at the power forward.
What about you? He said Nick has to come on the bench.
Why are you doing this?
Why not? Is there a problem with it? I think my youth pastor's the big man.
Are you doing this according to physicality, or are you ranking them according to your judgment of their theology?
Like physical.
I
You
didn't
didn't say
know what you were
that.
doing.
You never said that. You never said
I didn't know if
That's
you were
why I
like.
said that's why I said my youth pastor's the center. Like he's 6'6".
You said Chris Call is that point guard.
I did say that.
So what exciting is going on this weekend? Anything?
6'9".
There's no volleyball tonight. There's no
Pulse.
cross country. There's no golf.
There's a game tomorrow.
Volleyball tomorrow. Golf's got football tonight.
Yes, against the Pukes.
Street fair. You going to street fair? Anybody go to street fair?
Me now. I think the line came out. I think it's 45.
I have it. I'm right down the street now. I didn't go last year. I might not know.
Is there like food trucks?
You don't see them all lined up out there? What's that?
I think the line's 45.
It's 42. It's 42. 42. The Buckeyes line, yeah, it's 42 and a half. 42 and a half. I would say I got recorded 6 touchdowns.
We can't. Did you notice in the last few years we can't talk sports without
It's
talking about
like open up. They put like a sign on the front.
Yeah, because that's like half the fun
They lost 5 0 in Canadian.
What?
And I'm about to
They
put
need
a
to
serious bet
actually
on the Fuchs.
scout.
Hypothetically.
He's that guy. For real.
No, I feel like we should go direct on that.
I think,
Look, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, and then it's
What?
not fine.
Think what? I don't know.
you said I feel like. You were expressing a thought,
birthday today?
put it in terms of feeling.
What day is it?
Great.
Actually, it
Paul's birthday week.
Well,
is. Because you really meant to say it's what you thought,
the man
Right.
himself.
but you fell into the trap of making it about
Yeah.
feeling.
What?
Well, how do you feel about being born?
It's kinda like when everybody's, I've caught myself doing it. I'm like really adamant against doing it, and I've actually caught myself say those words, I feel
No, I
like,
don't
I'm like,
think it's
what?
ever been.
How did that just come out of my mouth? Cause everybody says it.
You're really.
Hey, if you're feeling extra cold, 90% of the bets are on the Vikings this weekend. You can put 10% on the
I thought you
Baker
were
and
gonna
the
give me
Bucks.
this Tyler thing, 90% of Denver's spread.
90% of bets are on the Vikings this weekend. Only 10% are on the Bucks and Baker.
So you gotta go against the public, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The Vikings already get good.
Did they really?
Of course, Gwen's saying the same thing,
Do you know that? ma'am, sit down, you go right to the right corner, you park up and you go to work, that's unbelievable. As much as I love her, I haven't had that for the last 2 years. Anna's usually doing her own schoolwork. Is it locked? Good grief, where are you carrying it? Is it a little chilly in here?
How are you grading these when they miss it?
Oh, well, looks like, well,
I kind of news.
oh, line through each line.
People don't write.
Yeah, that was the Wait. hope and pray that they have this epiphany someday that, if I would just do it, it's really not that much. If I would just do it.
Someday.
Okay. I gotta have music background. So you gotta deal with my music. I don't like it. Actually, it's not the same. I'm not. I don't know, music. Let's just. What do I feel like today? Was 70s, Imagine Dragons, Tom McDonald, Casting Crowns. It's like all over. Barry Manilow, Rudolph. Before they started singing the film call. Rain song. Songs about rain. Rain. You ever heard of Beautiful. That's not good. Man, it's gonna take me so long to figure out who's in which class. Ugh. I don't know why. Yeah. Barbie. Where's Barbie? Of course, you know Elvis. Kentucky. Okay. Yeah. There's one that says, I think, restroom on there. Lies crying in the rain.
I just replied to my boy Chase on our nutrition class.
You
We have to,
what?
we have to like reply to like, so we have to like post like a little like 2-paragraph like discussion.
Oh,
Or
he's
usually
got
reply to
he's
people.
got COVID right now.
That's crazy. Yeah, I was gonna say, cause he did his work pretty early. There's like 20 people out of like 130 that like have done the assignment so far, like through Sunday. He was one of them.
I think he's feeling better today, but a couple days ago,
Yeah.
he was said worst headache he's ever had. He
Is
couldn't
it like
hardly.
a fever?
I don't think the fever got bad. It's just very weak and headache. I think he's feeling a little better, but then I don't know what the protocol is exactly.
Yeah.
He said something about 10 days. It better not be. I mean, it's just one thing after another. Seriously.
I know.
And he gets discouraged and he's like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. He wrote on like the carnivore diet.
The who?
Carnivore diet?
Carnivore diet?
Yeah.
What is going on here? That's the problem.
We got Joe Rogan.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's his boy?
I mean, I think he likes him. He didn't bring up, what's his name, did he?
Jordan Peterson?
No. The worst one. The worst of the three. He was in jail in Romania.
Oh, Tate.
Andrew Tate.
He likes him?
We,
I mean, he has
several
his-
months
he has
ago,
his pros and cons.
we sat down and he took me through some of the things. So yeah, he says some things that make sense, but
Right.
then
Obviously, he's extreme.
he's, yeah, and then the whole materialistic,
Right.
being a man. I get the leadership part of being a man, yes, and there's certain aspects of man. He's right. We've emasculated manhood in our culture, but the part where he just thinks life's all about,
Cars.
yeah, wealth and
What is Chase's major?
he finally decided he's just general studies. He's just done. He might be.
So what's he doing? Baseball?
He can't see himself doing anything but sports, so he just said.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the prayer is by this time next year he'll be, just simply, if you have a degree and you've got all these people and connections, you'll be able to find a job.
Right. You?
That's the hope. Yuck. You wouldn't happen to see any stray Colossians 2:8 papers around, would you? Colossians 2:8? Well, that would be fantastic. Because there's a couple on here that I know they had to do it. Tyler and Tyler. Derek. Please be Lorelai. Yep. All right. Thank you very much. How we get today, Sunday. What is it?
Like their class stuff.
That's Anna's notes and stuff from.
Must be.
Oh, was that my folder right there? Classes on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably good to. Like these general things, like, I should probably keep finance. Things that we Oh, I did it again. Ugh.